You not only forced our son to do household chores and child rearing, but now you're after our money too? Get out of this house, you leeching lazy bum only bringing in $700. I broke into a cold sweat as my mother-in-law pointed a knife at me and shouted. I was heartbroken after all. I was doing all the work and taking care of the kids in place of my jobless husband. I had reached my breaking point. I abandoned the chores, grabbed my child, and decided to head back to my parents' house. My name is Emily, 23 years old, living with my husband, our child, and my mother-in-law. My husband Richard was a senior at my high school, an ace of the soccer team and the admired student president. He was the object of everyone's admiration. When he returned to our hometown after getting a job, he approached me, and I was taken aback. After a few dates, we began a serious relationship. Even as an adult, he was my handsome, brag-worthy boyfriend. After I graduated from a vocational school, I found out I was pregnant. The order was a bit off, but I believed I could have a happy life with my child and Richard. My hopes were shattered during a conversation about life after marriage.
How about we live in my parents' house after we get married?
Why? I would like it to be just the three of us with our child.
That's going to cost a lot, isn't it? If we live in my parents' house, we don't need to worry about money.
If we both work, we can afford an apartment, right?
Well, about that, my income this month is pretty bad.
How bad?
Less than $1,000.
What? Why so low? You said you were working at an IT company.
Actually, I quit. Now I'm making money at the casino and working part-time.
Casino? Why on earth would you do that? Apparently, he quit his job after just 1 month.
If you're willing to cover all the expenses, I'm fine with living in an apartment.
His detached tone made me anxious, wondering if I was the only one excited about our new life. Seeing my concern, he held both my hands tightly.
It's just until I find another job. I'll make you happy, Emily. I'll do all the housework and child rearing until then.
Believing in his words, we got married. We started our life in his parents' house. After safely giving birth, I resolved to work hard for my son. Both Richard and my mother-in-law seemed happy, and I was looking forward to our future life together. However, even after the birth, Richard didn't do any housework or child rearing, spending his days at the casino. Off to the casino again? What about the housework and child rearing? When I pointed out his broken promise, Richard suddenly yelled back at me.
Don't you dare tell me what to do.
Confused about why I was being yelled at, mother-in-law showed up having heard the commotion. What's all this noise?
Oh, it's just that I'm busy with work and she's asking for help with housework and child rearing.
What? That's a wife's job. Richard hadn't told mother-in-law he quit his job. He portrayed me as the worst wife, pushing housework and child rearing onto him. Mother-in-law, initially kind, started hating me after buying into Richard's story. Richard continued his part-time work and casino visits. Though he only earned about $700, he would ambitiously go to the casino, aiming to double it, but ended up losing everything. I paid most of the living expenses. Consequently, our life became tough without me working. So I started working again after leaving our son at a childcare center. Thankfully, my qualification as a dental hygienist landed me a job pretty quickly. But every day when I got home from work, I was met with my mother-in-law shouting, "What time do you think it is? This isn't playtime. You're a parent, yet all you do is frolic around. Get to making dinner now." In her frustration, mother-in-law slammed the newspaper she was holding onto the floor. She had a habit of lashing out at things, sometimes going as far as smashing plates when she got really angry. My mother-in-law was the explosive type. Her attitude would shift at the slightest annoyance. The fear of not knowing what she might do next kept me submissive. But between caring for my young son, working, and doing housework every day, I was mentally and physically drained. I couldn't take it anymore, so I decided to talk to Richard again. I caught him early in the morning before he left for the casino. "Listen, I am at my limit. You could help out with our kid a little, couldn't you?"
What? Like I said, I'm busy. I'm preparing to get a new job. You understand, right? Would you rather I stay unemployed forever? You'd be in trouble then, huh? The father of your child, jobless. If you don't like it, just do as you're told.
But We are barely scraping by as it is. I am covering all our food costs with my savings, you know. Do you have any idea how much diapers cost? You say you're earning at the casino, but you never give us any money. Our living expenses were mostly covered by my money. Mother-in-law used to pay for utilities, but recently she started asking for $500 a month, so I was dipping into my savings. Even the food costs were coming out of my savings and my money was running out fast. All I had was money saved from a part-time job I had when I was a student.
Enough. The nerve of you to talk back. You have a lot of nerve to say such things after you moved into my house.
Richard was usually very kind. However, when it came to money or casino-related issues, his attitude changed drastically. Hearing Richard's shouting, mother-in-law entered the room. What now? Is your wife complaining again?
Yeah, she is. She's telling me to do housework and childcare, and to pay for living expenses on top of that.
What a brazen woman you are. Richard, you should go to work.
Thanks, I'll be going.
With that, Richard left. As soon as Richard was out of sight, mother-in-law's gaze sharpened. You have got some nerve, pushing childcare and household work onto us and demanding money. You should be ashamed. It's not like that. I'm not making demands, it's just that, without a little help, life is really tough. You must be wasting it. Aren't you careless with money? Mother-in-law didn't understand the situation at all. She didn't know that her own son was unemployed and spending all his time at the casino. I was told to keep quiet, but I was at my wit's end. Do you know that Richard isn't bringing in a single cent? He's unemployed because he quit his job. What are you saying? Richard has always been excellent. He might have failed his college entrance exams, but he got a job at a reputable company. He quit that job after a month. He's always at the casino now. I can't survive on my savings alone. That's ridiculous. Stop talking nonsense. Mother-in-law refused to believe me. Her son, who had always excelled in sports and studies, was her pride and joy. She couldn't bear the thought that he was now unemployed and wasting his days at the casino. Her face red with anger, mother-in-law stormed out of the room. When she came back with a heavy stride, to my surprise, she was holding a knife in her hand. What are you planning to do? Please stop it. I back away, lifting my son into my arms. Mother-in-law is slowly closing the distance between us, knife raised high. She brings the tip of the knife to my throat. Enough of your insults to my son. Having a wife like you is ruining Richard. You're a lazy parasite living off a measly $70,000. Get out of this house. Her harsh words make me break into a cold sweat. The slightest movement could cause the blade to harm my son. Seeing my silence and my pale face, mother-in-law seems satisfied and lowers the knife. Good, you understand. Parasites like you are not wanted anywhere. Just stay quiet and do your housework. She throws these words at me before returning to her room. Released from the tension, I collapsed onto the ground. Sensing something wrong, my son started to sob. As I stroked his back, I made a decision. We can't live in this house any longer. It's unbelievable that someone would threaten with a knife so casually. She doesn't even seem human. Up until now, I have been swayed by Richard's sweet words. After every shouting match, I used to think that I needed to support him, that he would fall apart without me. But I have reached my limit. Above all, my most powerful thought was that I had to protect my crying son in my arms. I can't raise my son in this house. I decided to leave. The next day, a stern-faced mother-in-law speaks to me in the morning. Emily, please prepare for my husband's memorial service next week. All our relatives will be there, so make sure everything is perfect. She leaves for a neighbor's house without waiting for my reply. Next week is my father-in-law's memorial service. Richard and mother-in-law had been talking about ordering a grand feast and sharing memories of father-in-law. I have been tasked with all the preparation, but I am not listening anymore. As soon as Richard and mother-in-law are out, I hastily pack my things and flee the in-laws' house. I don't have much, just my clothes, my son's toys, and diapers. When I get back to my parents' house, they're surprised. But when I tell them everything, my mother is moved to tears and holds me tight. My usually calm father is very angry and tells me to rest at home. Then, that evening, the phone rings. It must be Richard, wondering why I haven't returned to make dinner. I ignore the call and block his number. The next day, mother-in-law and Richard show up together at my parents' house. They're banging on the door early in the morning. My parents try to drive them away, but I tell them to let them in. When I open the door, they start shouting immediately. How dare you leave without a word? What kind of wife are you?
Don't you think it's strange to leave without saying anything?
Can you please not shout? You're disturbing the neighbors. I keep my voice calm, suppressing the urge to say who's the real problem here. When they see my attitude, they try to grab me, but my father steps in.
We will call the police if you resort to violence. Let's talk inside first.
With my parents present, I started the conversation with mother-in-law and Richard.
Why did you leave without saying anything?
I had reached my limit. Housework, childcare, and my job all overwhelming me, and yet you never lifted a finger to help, despite my pleas.
Well, I was busy too.
Busy at the casino? Like I've already said, our son doesn't go to casino. Stop spreading lies. It seemed like the mother-in-law still thought Richard was working. It's unthinkable because he's such a good son. She must think like that. Ignorance is bliss. So, mother-in-law, where do you think Richard is employed? At a securities company. I saw the job offer letter after all. Well, we should call them and find out if Richard is still there. That would settle it.
What? Wait a minute.
Richard was obviously flustered. What's the problem? If you're working there, it shouldn't be an issue.
Well, that's,
Ignoring the visibly sweating Richard, I dialed a securities company on my phone. I switched the call to speaker mode so everyone could hear and asked if Richard was working there.
That individual resigned several years ago. If memory serves me right, he was with us for just about a month.
What? The words from the phone left mother-in-law speechless. Richard was looking down, his fist clenched. Did you really quit? Why?
Because it was frustrating. Every day was just grunt work and the boss would yell at me for the smallest mistakes. That's harassment.
Richard, why don't you tell us what you've been doing since?
I'm, job hunting.
How many years have you been job hunting? You don't seem to be getting any offers. Tell me how many companies you have applied to so I can verify.
Well, there aren't any good job offers. When a good company comes along, I'll get a job.
You seem to have a lot of confidence in yourself, by the way. You're working part-time now, right? How much did you make last month?
700?
700? Didn't you tell me that Emily could only earn 700 and couldn't support herself? So you were the one supporting her? Apparently, he told mother-in-law that I wasn't earning anything, but the reality was quite the opposite. As a dental hygienist, my salary isn't huge, but I earn at least $2,000. Knowing the truth, mother-in-law was blushing furiously as she glared at Richard. In that situation, Richard became extremely angry.
Why do you have to do this? This is all your fault, making me look like a fool.
Seems like his pride was hurt and he couldn't stand being embarrassed, so he hit the table hard.
You shouldn't reveal things like this in public. It's defamation.
I sighed in disbelief. If you want to sue, go ahead. But I'll sue you for threatening me with a knife too. Besides, lawsuits aren't free. Do you have the money? At that, Richard clicked his tongue. He probably spent all his earnings for this month at the casino. As mother-in-law was in shock, after learning the truth about Richard's unemployment, I laid it out for her. I am the one earning all our living expenses. When we got married, Richard said he would take care of housework and childcare in place of my job. But after we married, he did none of it. That's different from what I heard. Mother-in-law just went ahead and trusted whatever Richard told her, right? She got upset when I asked for help with the chores and childcare. She even pointed a knife at me and told me to keep quiet and do my housework. I could see my mother-in-law's face turning pale. Standing in front of my parents being called out for her misconduct, she looked uncomfortable. Mother-in-law, you haven't contributed a penny to the household either. We have been living on my income this whole time. I have no intention of working for you any longer. So I would like a divorce, please.
Divorce? Hold on a second. Don't just drop that bombshell all of a sudden.
Yes, that's right. I'll help out too, so please come back. No, thank you. When I made my stance clear, their eyes widened in surprise. They were likely startled because I, who had always acquiesced after being yelled at or persistently begged, had clearly refused this time. I don't want to live with a person who threatens me with a knife just to get their way. I'm tired of living with Richard, who does nothing but gamble at the casino all day. I am going to make sure you pay me compensation for all the hard work I have put in so far, as well as child support.
No way! That's going to be a problem. I can't possibly afford to pay that much.
Well, then quit gambling right now and start paying.
But there is no way I can do that. I don't have a job.
I was appalled by Richard's stupidity. You don't have a job because you're too picky about what work you do. Don't you have any desire to do whatever it takes? There aren't many companies out there that would hire someone without any significant qualifications or work experience. Don't take society for granted. Many people are out there working their hardest in difficult situations to earn a living. Yet people who quit their jobs at the drop of a hat because they got angry or didn't enjoy their work, no one's going to want to hire them. He keeps saying he'll find a job someday, but there is no way he will manage it at this rate. I'll contact you through my lawyer about the divorce proceedings. Please do not contact me at all from now on. What kind of selfish... What's going to happen to us? At my curt words, mother-in-law flared up in anger. I made a deliberately puzzled face and responded to mother-in-law's words. I don't know. Earn a living on your own? You heartless woman. Heartless? I don't want to be called that by you, remember? When you said the parasite living off a measly $700 per month is a nuisance? Leave my house? Do you remember saying that to me, your daughter-in-law, while holding a knife to my throat? By the way, the lazy person making $700 a month is right next to you. Are you not telling him to leave? As I spoke, mother-in-law started shaking with rage. Maybe I went too far. Mother-in-law leaned over and grabbed my collar.
Stop it. I told you. I will call the police if you lay a hand on her.
My father forcefully pulled her off of me, but she was too riled up. So not only threats with a knife, but physical violence too? How barbaric. Don't you think it's better not to compound your crimes any further? Mother-in-law glared at me resentfully. Ignoring my mother-in-law, I turned my gaze to Richard. I believed he would change, but I'm giving up on that now. I need to protect our son.
I won't trouble you anymore. I'll take care of the money, the housework, and the childcare, so please come back.
You will take care of the money? Really? Even with careful budgeting, it's over $1,000 a month. Can you earn that? Upon hearing my words, Richard's face turned pale. He had never made more than $1,000 since he quit his job.
But I have mom's pension.
What? So you're telling me you're dependent on my pension now? Even my mother-in-law couldn't keep her calm at his absurd words.
There's nothing else I can do. I don't have a job now. I'm doing part-time work. Can't we try to work things out?
My father, hearing Richard's unyielding stance, finally spoke up.
Richard, you and your mother have taken great advantage of our precious daughter. If I had known you were such a person, I would have opposed the marriage by all means. I will never let her step foot in your house again. I'll sever all ties. But I can't live without Emily. Please, give me another chance. Don't joke with me. Can't live without our daughter? You're already planning to depend on her, a man who has no intention or grit to earn his own living and make his wife's life comfortable. Doesn't deserve our daughter. Leave now.
For the first time, I saw my father shout. It sent chills down my spine. Richard and mother-in-law's too. Richard was kneeling, his head bowed. It was a comical sight. The charming image I had of him during our college days was completely gone.
Please reconsider. I beg you, Emily.
But my parents wouldn't budge. They were fed up. I don't want to be treated like a slave by you two anymore. Please don't involve me in anything from now on. As soon as we kicked them out of the house, we locked the door. For a while, they banged on the door and shouted, but as soon as a police officer passing by addressed them, they ran off. After that, I heard Richard was cut off by his mother and kicked out of the house. Now, he's living in a rundown apartment, surviving on welfare and part-time work. Apparently, because of his short temper, he doesn't stick to one job for long and keeps switching between part-time jobs at convenience stores, construction sites, and so on. He's barely making ends meet in order to pay me compensation and child support. He's juggling multiple part-time jobs and is unable to look for a full-time job. There were rumors that he's still going to the casino and even in debt, but I'm not interested. The word about Richard's downfall spread quickly among our high school classmates, and I received numerous sightings and informations about him. It seems that the neighbors have witnessed mother-in-law kicking Richard out, and their frequent arguments. His unemployment and the fact that he was left by his wife became public knowledge. She must be feeling extremely embarrassed after boasting about her son all the time. She hardly ever leaves the house now. With the help of my parents in doing the housework and raising my son, I continue working. I now have more free time to spend with my son. I don't need to leave him at the childcare center since my parents take care of him, so everything has been great. I wish I had divorced sooner. From now on, I'm going to cherish the time I spend with my son and watch him grow up closely.